sale this month. Fun
They
fact,
just
this is
ruined
the
them.
company's first vegan chocolate sold nationally. The company uses oats instead of milk to make its vegan chocolate. But if
Yuck!
you don't like peanut butter, don't worry, they got you covered. Hershey's will also release a plant-based extra creamy chocolate bar with almonds and sea salt like you see here.
Again, we're rolling over. Obviously, you can see where this is going. I don't know if it's because we're feeling especially emotional or just tired, or these past couple of weeks have been too much. But this reminds me so much of the first time we had sex. We were both terrified, and the whole thing was kind of terrible because we didn't know what we were doing. But it was good too, so good, because we were a mess of emotions, and we were scared and excited, and everything felt new. So this sort of thing just sort of feels like that. Nick touches me like he's scared of that any minute. Now, this book was at my middle school, and it was on a stand. When I rented it out to show my dad it, the librarian asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version.
Now, that was 11-year-old Knox Vayak. That's from the school board meeting in Maine, where he and his...
Again, I applaud the leadership there at the College of the Ozarks.
Tonight, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and fellow House Republicans are unveiling the GOP's Parents' Bill of Rights. Tony, your thoughts on that and what it means for parents?
It's a great bill, and this shows you that the Republicans in this 118th Congress are listening to the American people. I mean, the world is upside down when parents who care about the well-being of their children are called terrorists, and those who terrorize them with this ideology that they can choose their gender are called experts. So this is long overdue. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see what the other side of the aisle does with this measure that simply empowers parents, creates transparency in education, making sure that the parents who pay for the schools have an understanding of what their children are being taught and have a voice in the process. I'm excited about the bill. Julie Letlow of Louisiana is the author of the bill. She's going to be carrying it. And I'm hopeful that this will even spur activity at the state level across the country to respect the rights of parents to be involved in the education of their children.
Tony, let's talk about the Equal Rights Amendment while we have you here. Critics say it could be used to strike down pro-life laws, promote public funding for abortion, and really impinge on religious freedom. The Senate, they held a hearing yesterday discussing ways to fast-track the ERA. Does it have a chance of passing this Congress? What do you think?
Look, this is a 50-year-old idea that time has passed. Look, women have equal access. That right has been protected. We see it in credit. We see it in education. We see it in the workplace. But, you know, ironically, where women don't have the protection is to womanhood. We see the left now wanting to treat men and women as if they were interchangeable constructs, when in fact they're biological realities, and they carry great spiritual truths along with them. So I think the ERA is a bad idea. It's more of a smokescreen for the left to push their radical ideology. And if you really dig down on it, you see that the left will not protect womanhood. If they did, they wouldn't be pushing all of this transgender ideology.
All right, Tony Perkins.
I had moved to the Catholic board, and female students in the school informed me that male students were using the female washrooms, and they were concerned by this. So I decided to talk about that. I voiced my beliefs, and I expressed concern to the principal. A female student also expressed concern to the principal, and we were both ignored. So at that point, I decided to organize a protest outside to shed some light on what was going on behind closed doors. And they ended up suspending me indefinitely 2 days before the actual protest. They gave me an exclusion order. This exclusion order was completely unlawful and discriminatory, and so I decided to show up to school regardless of the exclusion order, and at that point they hit me with a trespassing notice and another suspension. I waited all of that out until the end of the semester, lost 4 of my credits, and by the beginning of the next semester, with my lawyer, I informed them that I would return to school and continue to adhere to my religious beliefs. Not long into that time, I was brought to the office. The principal blocked the exit, and two police officers ended up entering the building. And when they told me to leave, I explained to them the situation, how I was only in that situation because of my beliefs, and that I exercised my fundamental freedoms, and that I wasn't going to leave on a request. So they ended up arresting me, and they charged me with trespassing.
Were you hateful or disrespectful? What tone did you take when you said what you did?
No, I wasn't disrespectful at all. I voiced my beliefs, my sincere beliefs, and I never directed at a specific trans student that was doing anything. I don't condone their behavior, but I also sympathize with them because they're a victim of our society, and our education system, and the terrible parents that have encouraged and pushed that on their children. I was called a racist, a sexist, a bigot by staff and students were involved in this stuff. And I just continued to voice my beliefs, and it ended up getting me arrested. There was conditions they wanted me to agree to in order to return to school. As a Christian, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to accept the falsehood. I'm not going to go along with the mainstream narrative that is completely contrary to God's natural order. So I couldn't agree to those conditions, and that's where I'm at this point.
Were you actually...
Is also preparing to ask the Supreme Court to back the law. She says it's, quote, a common sense law that protects equal opportunity, fairness, and safety for women. The ACLU is arguing in its lawsuit that the West Virginia statute violates the rights of the middle school student. Turning now to what some have called the scourge of vaping that's gripping the nation's youth. Dragonthal, Straw Nanner's Ice. These are some of the flavors out of the market appealing to kids. Montana school officials are now warning a new generation is becoming addicted to nicotine. Our next guest weighs in on the impact communities are facing due to a rise in a certain type of vaping product and what is sometimes added to it. Joining us to discuss is Javier Palomares, founder and CEO of the Hispanic Business Council. It's great to have you on the show today, Javier.
Kevin, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, these are illicit disposable vapes, and it's causing a lot of concern. Can you tell us how this is impacting the Hispanic community?
Well, as you pointed out, Kevin, there's a Trump policy that's on the books today that banned certain vaping products to be sold in the United States, but it inadvertently created a loophole that allowed for disposable vapes to be sold into our market. I found out recently that business is booming. The sale of these disposable vapes is up more than 2,000% over the last couple of years. And I've traveled to a couple of dispensaries and convenience stores and actually seen these products and purchased a couple. And frankly, Kevin, it's appalling. It is explicitly targeting our children. These manufacturers are targeting our children with products that look and taste like candy. Product names like bubblegum and watermelon Skittles, Cake Pop, Gummy Bear, Rainbow Candy, and the list goes on. It was appalling. And I might add that none of these disposable flavored vape products are FDA authorized.
So, Javier, can you tell us how House Bill 901 is going to close this loophole that allowed the sale of these disposable vaping products?
Great question. I want to give a shout out to Congresswoman Sheila Sherfilis-McCormick, who is trying to pass House Bill 901. I'm calling on every member, certainly of the Hispanic caucus, to step up and step in, as Congresswoman McCormick has done to protect our children. It is critical that that loophole be closed. This is easy. This can be done. It simply calls for our members of Congress to step up and protect our children. Congressman McCormick herself is a mother and a former healthcare executive, so she knows what she's talking about. I want to commend her for her courage in stepping in here and stepping up on behalf of our children.
Closing loopholes to protect the youth, that's very important. Javier, can you tell us more about how illicit vaping products are now being used in conjunction with fentanyl?
Yeah, this is the scariest part of everything here, Kevin. I've found, and we have found, that oftentimes these vaping products are laced with drugs to include fentanyl. So you can imagine the risk that our children are at right now. I mean, think about it. Our kids right now have to deal with a host of challenges, including, mass shootings in their schools, online bullying and harassment, a racial and cultural divide unlike what we've ever seen before. and a surge in teen suicide rates. We should be able to block what is happening now with these favored vaping products and make sure that we try to protect our children as best we can.
These vape retailers have taken a lot of heat, but some of them say not to blame them for the problem, claiming they're simply helping adults quit smoking. What's your reaction to this?
You know, I understand that perspective. And I also have to say that as an organization that advocates on behalf of business, obviously we believe in commerce. We support commerce, but commerce with a conscience. Whatever the margins are on these products, and they're very good margins, I'm imploring our Hispanic business owners, bodega owners, convenience store owners to step away from these products, take them off the shelves. It's not worth the lives of our children. It's not worth putting our children at risk.
Some important decisions to make. Javier Palomares, founder and CEO of the Hispanic Business Council, thank you so much for your update.
As always, Kevin, thanks for giving small business a voice.
Faiths that had the greatest religious influence on Europe and into the Americas were called people of the book. And that book was central to their identity. Of course, the Enlightenment came in. We started to change our thinking. We spent the last 100 years of the 20th century with all of these isms coming in to change the dominant narrative that has shaped civilization, not just American society, but civilization throughout the millennia that have gone by. And we are now realizing that all of those things have failed. We understand clearly, you appreciate this, that God created government, but people created politics with all of its political constructs, its ideas, policies, and practices. God created government. That's divine, to preserve order, to restrain evil, to protect the life and dignity of the human person, to preserve and promote the common good, and to promote justice. But how we do that are constructs that come from human beings. And when God no longer informs our politics, we lose our moral compass. And we begin to move away from the original intent in the mind of God for government. Now, many of those constructs are divinely inspired, we know, by the fruit that they bear and how they relate to God's purpose for government.
It's really wonderfully said. I like how you stated that God created government, people created politics, and therein lies the rub. And you alluded to that. Where have we come as a nation when we have forgotten the divine inspiration for government so that we are truly serve the purpose of being one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all?
So we think we're smarter. So we decide, we're going to rearrange the family construct. We're going to rearrange the roles of male and female. We're going to redefine all of these things. The problem is we don't have generations to experiment to understand their outcome. God knows the outcome. So he can weigh in a way that we can't. So it's difficult for humans, as much as we are in rebellion against divine authority, to embrace the reality that maybe there is a social reality that pre-exists our current generation, that has been subscribed to by civilizations throughout history, that there's family. That family is foundational to society, that there's a set of moral values and moral code that guide us, that community begins and socialization begins in the context of the family. And the Bible feeds all of that. The Bible gives order. We talk about, in the beginning God created, and that's an interesting word, bara, in the Hebrew, because it doesn't just mean create from nothing, but it means to order, to bring order and fill that order. And that's exactly what God did. So we're talking about divine order versus human order.
How do we get all of us on board so that we have a common hope, a common bond, and perhaps do it in a bipartisan way?
I had the opportunity to pray for the opening of the Senate last month. And in my prayer, I talked about our love for free market and our concern for the least of these, the most vulnerable in society, coming together in the spirit of collaboration towards the common good. And I think that that's what we need to work towards. Instead of separating ourselves based upon our tribe, maybe we need to think beyond tribalism and begin to say, well, wait a minute, we've got a nation here. And if that nation that we declare is undivided, indivisible, under God, then maybe we need to revisit those foundational principles that made us who we are as a nation and has positioned us where we are as a number one superpower. To move away from those foundations, we lose that positioning in this global village that's becoming smaller and smaller. We have a responsibility as people of faith to urge our elected officials to measure their judgments and decisions according to God's perspective on the nature and ordering of human society. We get back to that, we'll see a healing in our nation.
Or even more confusing, if they type the word no before the cap emoji, it means they believe you. Another emerging emoji, the cowboy. According to its creators, the intended meaning for the cowboy is exuberance, but Gen Z uses it to convey pretending to be happy when you are sad. If you're over 30, you may want to check these out. Using any of these are a telltale sign you're older. With ways to navigate the emoji world, I'm Nancy Alvarez reporting.